Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session on the Western Ghats. I know that all of you here listening to this talk know a lot more about the Western Ghats than I do. But over here, through this presentation, we aim to bring to you a few very important highlights about the Western Ghats that are very important for you to know, especially if you're going to become a future naturalist guide in this area. Western Ghats, as you know, are extremely popular for a few big highlights, like the big sprawling tea gardens. People love to come and visit here. Couples like to stand in here and get selfies. Big gushing waterfalls, where people flock in large numbers, especially during the rainy season. And then, of course, big temples, old pilgrim spots where people go to worship year after year since centuries. But as you all know, the Western Ghats are a lot more than these handful popular highlights. Before we get into learning more about the Western Ghats, let's zoom out a little. Let's see where we are in this world. India is here. If you look at the big world map, India is a tiny piece of land on this planet. But by no means is India a simple or a plain boring place. India is full of different topographies, high mountain ranges, big river deltas, long coastlines, deserts, hill ranges, and whatnot. In this map, let's look at some broad geographical regions. Starting in the north, we have what we call the Trans Himalayas. The Trans Himalayas are a mountain range that are a high altitude cold desert. It's very dry, it's very high in altitude, and gets very, very cold. South of that, spreading from west all the way to the east, are the great Himalayan mountain ranges along with its subsidiary ranges. If you come south and go to the west, you have the big Thar Desert, which gets again very little rainfall. It's very dry, but it's a hot desert. It gets some of the highest temperatures in the country. Next to it is an area which we call the semi-arid area because it gets little more rainfall than the very dry desert. In this area is also we have the Aravalli mountain ranges. Further east, we have the big, flat, long Gangetic plain where the river Ganga flows. Somewhere about here, the Ganges, river Ganga, descends from the high mountains of the Himalayas and reaches the plains. Over here, it does a long journey where it meets many other smaller rivers and finally ends up in the Bay of Bengal. Easternmost area is what we popularly call the northeastern region. This is also a very fascinating region, which is also hilly, has lots of rivers, and has some amazing rainforests with great amount of different kinds of plants and animals living here. Further south, right in the center, we have the Central Highlands region. Over here, we have the ranges of the Vindhyas and the Satpuras, and between them flows the mighty Narmada River, all the way from the east to the west, ending up in the Arabian Sea. Further south, still in the center, we have the Deccan Plateau, and to the west, all along the western edge of India, we have a hill range called the Western Ghats. And to the east, we have an older but broken and lower range of mountains called the Eastern Ghats. What you see here as a purple line is marking our long coastline. For a small country like India, we have a really long coastline on the edge. Then we have the island system, the Lakshadweep Islands to the west and the Andaman Nicobar Islands to the east. With all of these different sort of geographic areas, India becomes a very, very interesting country to learn about and to explore. Before I move ahead, I want to introduce a term to you, peninsula. You see this roughly triangular area, this one, where you have ocean on two sides and land on one side. This triangular area is referred to as Peninsula India. We will be referring to this term again and again during the course, so do keep in mind. Okay, moving on. Because of these varied topographies, mountains, deserts, hills, coastlines, and whatnot, India has many, many different types of forest covers. You see this map in the center? All these different spots and patches in all these different colors are different types of habitats, wilderness areas, or you can call it forest types. When you have so many different types of habitats and forest types, this place can become home to a large number of different types of plants, animals, fungus, and whatnot, because they are adapted to living in different types of habitats. Now, let's focus on the Western Ghats. The Western Ghats, as we just discussed, runs all along the western edge of India, as you can see here in green. It is almost 1600 kilometers long and it's 30 to 100 kilometers wide in different areas. It starts south of River Tapi. River Tapi flows here from the east to the west, and just south of that is where the Western Ghats begin. It goes through the south of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Kerala, and some parts of Tamil Nadu till the southern tip where it ends in Kanyakumari. The Western Ghats has one major gap. There are some other smaller ones, but the most important gap, the widest one, is the Pal Ghat gap. It is about 30 kilometers wide and it is located in central Kerala, approximately extending through the border of Tamil Nadu. The highest point in the Western Ghats is called the Anemudi. The Anemudi is also located in Kerala, close to the border with Tamil Nadu. It is 2,695 meters high. So, how were the Western Ghats formed? There are a few different theories. I will discuss with you one of the most popular ones. To explain this theory of how the Western Ghats were formed, I will have to take you back in history by 250 million years. Before 250 million years ago, the map of the earth looked different. All the landmass was joined together in one big piece. Geologists call this piece Pangaea. Around 250 million years ago, there was major activity under the surface of the earth, because of which this piece of land called Pangaea started breaking into smaller pieces, and these pieces started moving and rearranging themselves slowly and slowly to finally become how the earth looks today. So when these pieces started moving apart, The pieces of South America and Africa separated from another piece which had India, Antarctica, Australia, and Madagascar inside it. These pieces also started breaking, and finally, Madagascar and India became isolated. Finally, Madagascar and India also broke away, and then Madagascar got left behind, and India started moving further and further away in the northeastern direction. India kept moving until it crashed into the Eurasian plate, which is the plate, the landmass which has Europe and Asia. When India crashed into the Eurasian plate, that gave rise to the Himalayas. That's why the Himalayan mountain range forms the northernmost boundary of India. But let's come back. Let's come back to the time when India and Madagascar were together and they broke apart. They split. So when Madagascar and India split away, this was about, 100 million years ago, approximately. And when that happened, something interesting happened in the Indian landmass. So imagine this is Madagascar and this long one is India. When they broke apart and when so much activity was happening under the surface of the earth, there were also a lot of volcanic eruptions, lava coming out of the Indian landmass. And when Madagascar and India split away, the land between them sort of slipped and fell lower. This is called fault. And when this happened, along with the volcanic eruption simultaneously going on, there was sort of a pressure release. And the Indian landmass became slanting. It tilted on one side, such that the western edge became higher and the eastern edge became lower. Let's see what happened next. I've tried to explain it with simple diagrams. I hope you'll understand. So now you have this tilted, lifted landmass, right? This is the western side and this is the eastern side. And slowly India continued to move further and further away from Madagascar. That time, lots of different natural elements were attacking this landmass. There were huge waves, there was storms, there was rainfall, and all of this started carving this landmass, like a sculptor carves a statue, just like that. And what happened is that there were valleys and river systems starting to form. And this wall, the lifted wall, got pushed a little further behind, leaving a narrow strip in the front of it. And this kept continuing as India kept moving further away. So then the result was a narrow, flat coastline, which has Arabian Sea on one side and Indian Ocean. And suddenly there is a wall rising. And this has carved into many waterfalls, rivers, etc., etc. This wall is called the escarpment. So by this theory of formation of Western Ghats, the Western Ghats are called the escarpment kind of mountain range or hill range. I hope you've been able to understand this. Moving on. So because of this formation, right, you can see you have the Arabian Sea to the west, a narrow, flat coastal plain. Then you have the sudden rise of the Western Ghats and a gentle slope on the east. Here you had the volcanic eruptions, if you remember, and ending up on the Eastern Ghats. And on the other end, you have the ocean again, you have the Bay of Bengal. Because of this kind of topography, what do you think will happen to the rivers and to the water that's rising out of the Western Ghats? What will happen to the water that's flowing to the west? It will be fast flowing, it'll be short, quickly ending up in the Arabian Sea. But the water that's rising out of the Western Ghats and flowing to the east will have a gentle slope. It'll be flowing much more slowly. It has a long journey to cover, and it gives it the time for the water to merge and form large, important rivers before it ends its journey into the Bay of Bengal. Because of this, a lot of water that's coming out of the Western Ghats feeds the entire Peninsula India. If you look at the map of Peninsula India, you will see that many important rivers come out of the Western Ghats, giving water to the entire peninsula before it ends its journey. Be it Godavari, Krishna, Tungabhadra, Kaveri, right? Just to give you a few examples. So the Western Ghats are extremely important to secure the source of water for entire Peninsula India. Now let's look at a few other aspects, the aspects of climate and weather. So as you can see, the Western Ghats, the entire Peninsula India is tropical. What do you mean by tropical? That this area is between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer. This is the area which gets a lot of sunlight, has warm summers, right? Another important thing is that India gets its main monsoon from the southwest winds, right? The winds that come from the southwest around end of May, June, July, August, September bring the most amount of rainfall to our country. The first barrier, the first wall that these monsoon winds face are the Western Ghats. So Western Ghats get a large share of rainfall from the southwest monsoon winds. India also has another minor monsoon called the northeast monsoon, where winds with rain come from the northeast and give little bit of rain to the country during the later part. We call it the retreating monsoon, which comes in about the time of October, November. But because of this great rainfall, the average rainfall is Western Ghats is between 300 to 400 centimeters, going as high as 900 or even 1000 centimeters sometimes. Agumbe, which is a place in the Western Ghats of Karnataka, is one of the wettest places on earth. So here's a short diagram showing you how the Western Ghats get a large part of their monsoon from the southwest monsoon from June to September, and some minor monsoon, lighter rainfall from the retreating northeast monsoon in October, November. Because of this and the warm weather, because of its tropical location, Western Ghats has a large variety of different forest types. Let's start with the windward side. The side that is wetter gets a lot more rainfall. In the lower elevations, in the low height, we have thick, warm, moist, dense forest which we call the lowland evergreen forest. They also have special forest types like the Myristica swamps. We will talk more about it later, which form in wet, swampy areas. As you go higher on the windward side, you have more evergreen forests, which are also thick rain forests. We call them the mid elevation evergreen forest. Over here, you have many similar species like in the lower lands, but it may not have certain species like the Myristica swarms, for example. At similar altitude, on the drier side, on the leeward side, you have much drier forest types because it gets less rainfall. And this has forest types like scrub forests, which are low shrubby forests. Then as you go higher, you may come into dry deciduous forest, which has some trees and some shrubland. And even higher as you go, you have taller trees. We call them the moist deciduous forest. Basically, these forests, deciduous forests or scrub forests, do not have leaf cover throughout the year. So when they get monsoon, when they have moisture, they have leaf cover. But as the year gets drier, as the weather gets drier, they drop all their leaves and then they bring their leaves again with the next monsoon. This basically has been divided as per even how much rainfall they get. So moist deciduous, so the higher elevation on the eastern side gets more rainfall, lesser and lesser as you come down to the plains. Another interesting habitat is in the higher elevation of the Western Ghats. One is called the Shola, and even way high up in the highest reaches of the Western Ghats, you have the montane grasslands and the peat bog type of forest patches. We will learn more about this as we go ahead. But this is just to show you that because of all these weather patterns, because of the location in the tropical area and different elevation, different altitude in the mountain range, all these factors give rise to different types of forest, even within the Western Ghats. And these different forest types will influence what different animals and plants live in different areas of the Western Ghats. Because of this great diversity of forest types, plants, animals, and different creatures that live here, Western Ghats is not only recognized in India, but it also has got a lot of international recognition for its rich natural heritage. UNESCO has termed it as one of the World Heritage Sites, means an area that should be protected forever and ever for the natural wealth that it has. And it is also a biodiversity hotspot. As you can see in this map, all the patches colored in red are different biodiversity hotspots of the world. And if you look here, you will see that Western Ghats, along with Sri Lanka, are one of the biodiversity hotspots of the world. So what makes a region a biodiversity hotspot? There are three different criteria that need to be met. Number one, this area should have a high amount of biodiversity, which means it should have a lot of variety of different plants and animals and wild creatures that live in this area. Number two, it should have a high number of endemic species. Endemic means species or creatures that are found nowhere else on the planet but in this region. So for example, if I tell you that there is a bird called the Nilgiri flowerpecker, which is endemic to the Western Ghats, it means that the Nilgiri flowerpecker, this bird is found nowhere else on the planet but in the Western Ghats. So, a biodiversity hotspot has a large variety of animals, and out of those large variety of animals, there will be many animals and plants that are found nowhere else. They are unique to this region. And thirdly, which is a rather sad point, is that this region should be highly threatened, which means that less than 30% of the original forest cover is now remaining in the present times. 70% or more than 70% is lost. Western Ghats and Sri Lanka are said to be some of the hottest biodiversity hotspots in the world. So now let's look at a few highlights which brought it onto the map of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites. This one, I'm sure you know very, very well. The Neelakuranji or the Strobilanthus. Such a special event when once in 12 years there is mass flowering, mass blooming of this plant. Hill ranges in many parts become purple because of the flowers. And because it is such a rare event, it's even more special. It makes headlines in Indian newspapers and even internationally when this event takes place. If you have not had a chance to witness this, I certainly hope that one day you will get a chance to see this beautiful phenomena. Another highlight, the Myristica swamps. I mentioned this earlier when we were looking at the different habitats. These are formed in the low altitude areas of wet forest, lowland rainforest. There are only a handful left now in the Western Ghats also. These are special forests which grow in wet, swampy areas, marshy land, where the land has lot of water. Because of this, the trees over here have formed roots that are not just below the surface of the earth, but they start above the ground and go from top to the bottom, as you can see here in the photograph. This helps the roots to breathe in these waterlogged areas. Myristica swamps are dominated by a group of trees that belong to the Myristica genus. Another interesting thing about the Myristica swarms is this beautiful insect. It's a damselfly called the Myristica sapphire. This damselfly largely prefers to live in this Myristica swamps. It's rarely found outside of these forests. How amazing is that, isn't it? Moving on, a very special and my favorite type of habitat, a big highlight of the Western Ghat, is called the shola. The shola is a combination of wooded forests, like you can see in this diagram over here. They are like island forests, they are patches in what is otherwise a grassland area. All this brown that you see is grassland. This photograph was taken at a dry time, that's why it's all brown. In the wetter times of the year, it'll be lush green with tall grasses. So this combination of dense but short trees, stunted forests, in these gaps, in these depressions in the hill ranges and covered by these grasslands is an absolutely unique type of habitat in the world and is found only in the Western Ghats. And this habitat, also sometimes called the sky islands or the cloud forests, have their own special inhabitants, special creatures, birds, animals, and plants that live uniquely to this kind of forest. Another important highlight is the indigenous communities. These the Kadars, the Malay Malassars. These are some of the oldest, the Todas, like the photograph here, are some of the oldest communities, oldest human populations that have lived in the Western Ghats. Their way of living, their knowledge of the forest, their lifestyle is just so interesting and such a precious element of the Western Ghats. If, as a nature guide of this region, you can learn about them, you can learn from them, you can get some of their knowledge, it will be a very special addition to you as a nature guide of this region. Now, let's come to the biodiversity of the Western Ghats, because of which it has been nominated as one of the biodiversity hotspots of the world. So let's start with the mammals. There are about 137 mammals recorded in the Western Ghats, and out of that, 16 are endemic, means found nowhere else outside the Western Ghats, and 13 mammals are threatened, which means that they are in the danger of extinction. Their populations have become so small that if we don't look after them, they will disappear. Amphibians, which means frogs, toads, Sicilians, there are over 250 recorded, and more than 80% out of these are endemic. That's a very high percentage. Reptiles like snakes, lizards, etc., there are over 200 recorded. More and more continue to be recorded, and out of them, about 60% are endemic to the Western Ghats. Birds, more than 550 different birds have been recorded. This includes resident birds, birds that live in the Western Ghats throughout the year, and it also includes migratory birds, birds that come and visit the Western Ghats in certain times of the year and go back. So amongst the birds, you have 29 endemic birds. You know, it is so amazing. These endemic species are a big highlight with wildlife travelers who come to visit the Western Ghats. They love to see these creatures. Of course, they will, because they are found nowhere else. This is the only place where you can see them. Harsha and I have led trips, have taken guests to see the Western Ghats, especially to see as many of these 29 endemic birds as we can. That was the focus of the trip. And similarly, there are groups of people who come looking for endemic mammals, reptiles, and even amphibians. It's impossible for me to take you through all of these different mammals, amphibians, reptiles, birds, right? But let me show you a few examples, and then we will also look at a few examples of creatures outside of the animal kingdom as we go ahead. Let's look at mammals first. Western Ghats is home to two big cats, the leopard, as shown here, as well as the tiger. It also has some large mammals like the Asian elephant and the gaur, and also has some smaller, very interesting mammals like shrews or mongooses, right? There are also mammals, as you know, which are endemic to this area and are also threatened. You can imagine if only less than 30% of the original forest cover remains in the Western Ghats, what will happen to all the endemic creatures who are found only here and found nowhere else outside? Many of them are threatened. Their existence is in risk. Some of the examples are the Nilgiri Thar, a mountain goat that is found in cliff areas. It likes steep slopes and also is found in the Shola grasslands. Another example is the lion-tailed macaque. This monkey, such a beautiful creature, is highly arboreal, which means it lives most of its life in trees, rarely coming down. And when it has to look for food or different troops of monkeys or its mate, it travels from tree to tree. Imagine if forests are cut down, how will these kind of creatures survive? Isn't it? Anyway, let's move on. Birds. Western Ghats has an amazing variety of birds, from large birds like the great hornbill to tiny birds, one of the smallest in our country, the Nilgiri flowerpecker, which, as you know, is also an endemic to the Western Ghats. Amphibians. Look at this strangely amazing looking creature. This one is one of the two species of the purple frog. The amazing thing about the purple frog is that, the purple frog is here, right? In the Western Ghats, it's found in the Western Ghats. The closest related species, the closest similar species of the purple frog is found here in the islands close to Madagascar. This is also a proof that once upon a time, many million years ago, India and Madagascar were attached. How fascinating it is, isn't it? This frog also is a threatened species. Insects and other smaller creatures. I don't even know where to begin. There is such an amazing variety of this in the Western Ghats. That's why walks in the Western Ghats are all the more fun, because not only are you looking for large, big creatures, but even a great variety of smaller creatures that are great to find on walks, especially. There is such a big variety. I don't even know if I have a number to give you. And more keep getting discovered so frequently. Fireflies. I especially added this picture because it is such an amazing event. The dance of lights. I'm sure you're aware of these insects. Do you know that people travel kilometers to come to see this amazing spectacle? They would come and stay with you. They will stay up night after night to watch this, to photograph this amazing phenomena. If you know of a place around your home where this congregation, this collection of fireflies happens, even you can offer this as a great nature experience to your guests. Coming to the flora, to the plant life, there are over 5,000 native flowering plants and many other non-flowering plants also, like mosses or ferns, etc. Together, I think there are over 10,000 different plants that live in the Western Ghats. And out of these, over 2,000 plants are endemic to the Western Ghats. Everything from tiny, beautiful, delicate plants like the balsam, also called the impatiens, to large, iconic trees like the Kulinia, which the lion-tailed macaque love to feed on. All this great variety makes the Western Ghats such a special place. Fungi. There has never been a walk that I have done in the Western Ghats without bending over till I break my back each time to look closely at this amazing variety of fungi, mushrooms that live in the Western Ghats. Look at the different shapes, sizes, colors, patterns. It's hard not to be completely fascinated by the different fungi. I hope this short journey through the Western Ghats on the computer has got you motivated enough to step out of your house and start looking for all these amazing different creatures that live in the Western Ghats. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you so much for listening.